My earliest memory of HIV/AIDS was sitting in my hematologist office with my pregnant wife, and he was saying that there was something wrong with the blood supply. Do not have children. I looked at my wife's pregnant belly and back at him and said, too late. And I did not find out that I was HIV positive until 1987. It really threw us in a tailspin because we didn't understand it. There was very little information. We didn't know whether it was transmitted through saliva. We were very scared that my daughter would be infected, and we had my wife tested numerous times. We didn't want friends or family or anybody to know, even though I have a sibling who is also HIV positive. We pretty much kept it from extended family. We kept it from my employers. We kept it from the people that we socialized with. We kept it from our church group, which we were very active in. So we went into more or less fear protection mode. I found out through court documents that I was intentionally infected by one of the manufacturers. A list of lot numbers from one of the manufacturers matched the lot numbers that I had tracked because I had kept my bleeding logs and my infusion logs ever since I started home infusion. The memos had 4 of my lot numbers, and the manufacturer's memo basically said, we understand it's infected, we're going to sell it anyway, and they would just take the risks. Unfortunately, that risk was mine, and I was infected. Because of that, I went into fits of anger and rage to find out that so many of us in the hemophilia community were infected intentionally. I had to go through years and years of therapy to get through that. The hemophilia community has had to endure the worst medically induced Holocaust in history. The manufacturers didn't protect the hemophilia community because if they had heat treated and done solvent detergent, it would have cut their yields by about 60%. They did not do that until the mid to late 80s. And unfortunately, when they were forced in the United States to clean up the product, they sold what they had left that was contaminated overseas. Because of the intentional infection, we filed a class action lawsuit. Unfortunately, the class action was not certified. Judge Grady in Chicago had decertified the class. The litigation was actually settled in the late 90s. There was a brokered deal between the 4 manufacturers and the hemophilia community for $100,000 of compassionate care that was given to each person. They admitted no culpability, even though there was proof in documents. And the hemophilia community was dying at the rate of 2 people per day. The Committee of 10,000 was formed in 1989. It was obvious to us that the national organization that existed at the time was not looking out for the hemophilia community because they sent a memo out saying, continue to use your factor, when it was very suspect that it was HIV and HCV positive. So the Committee of 10,000 was formed to be a voice for those who were infected. We have been an organization that advocates for blood safety. We requested that the Institute of Medicine, that the IOM, did a complete and full study on what happened to the hemophilia community. Out of that IOM report came 2 committees that are specifically to look at blood safety. We have been pretty much the watchdog of the blood supply in the early years. The hemophilia community came together, all the national organizations came together, and we introduced a bill called the Ricky Ray Relief Fund Act. It was signed into law in 1998. It gave compassionate care to the hemophilia community, whether it was a spouse or an individual with hemophilia that were infected because of the clotting factor. It gave each individual $100,000. Most people who were HIV infected received $200,000. 100,000 from the manufacturers, 100,000 from the government. I believe that the hemophilia community made our blood supply safer for everyone else. We really are unsung heroes because we were the canaries in the coal mine. We also went underground because of the stigma of HIV and AIDS, and we paid dearly with our community in percentages. I also consider my second child, who was never born, to be a casualty of this Holocaust, because my wife and I were not willing to risk her being infected or the baby to be infected. I still have times of anger and grief. There are times that I even have survivor guilt because 90% of my peers have died from HIV, AIDS, and HCV.